Thanks so much for making some time today, man. I really
Of
appreciate it.
course. Appreciate you having me.
Um, I was thinking about you today because I was listening to your podcast through the screen door,
Okay, I was about to
and
say which one.
you were talking about how you go by Corey Ryan Forrester, preferably because it's most conducive to like a professional wrestler announcer,
Yeah,
and build up to
yeah,
it.
yeah, and it's pompous. Like I feel like it's more I feel like it's more pretentious, and also like that's what they call serial killers. Just you know what like
Yeah.
anytime somebody has three names, you're like, hey, wait, hold on, pay attention to this guy. Like it just sounds more important. I don't know why. That may be stupid. I've just always felt that way. I just like the way it sounded.
Well, anytime that I have to be formal, I go by James Blair Kennedy and wait for it, the third.
There you
That adds
go.
an extra layer of pretentiousness to it.
Oh,
But
dude, if I had the third, I just might start going by Corey Ryan Forrester the third, just and have everybody just like hunt for the junior and senior.
I was thinking about it, and as a wrestling fan, I'm sure you are aware of this guy, and I like him because he shares my last name, Mr. Kennedy, the guy who
Oh
would do
yeah,
his own announcer, be his
yep,
own announcer.
absolutely.
That was always the best. But I wanted to talk to you just because I love your content. The idea of cutting promos and connecting it politically is just brilliant to me.
Well,
What
thank
are
you.
some of the comedians that you watched growing up that that made you want to do this as a profession?
It's funny because whenever I get asked that question, I don't think anybody ever expects the answer that I'm going to give because none of the three people that I'm about to name, like I don't seem, I don't have their style, but like to me, my three probably biggest influences were like Jerry Seinfeld, Mel
Yeah.
Brooks, and Bugs Bunny. I know that's a weird answer, but when I was a kid, like Jerry Seinfeld was just always in the house, because of the show and because he was always on Carson or soon after Leno. Like I'm old enough to kind of remember being on the floor watching Carson. But it was mainly Leno. My dad always watched Leno. And it's really weird because like now the more I talk to my dad, the more I realized that he actually thought Letterman was funnier. He was just very loyal to the Tonight Show because that's what Johnny was. So he
Right.
kept watching Leno because he was like, this is what Johnny would want me to do. So I'm going to keep watching the show. So when I was a kid, it was like those kind of like clean cut stand up comedians. And then I heard about this guy named Tim Wilson who used to come to the Comedy Catch in Chattanooga all the time, and my dad worked in advertising, and he would get these Tim Wilson CDs and put them on in the car. And I heard this guy, and he sounded like me, and I was like, oh wow. Then I saw Jeff Foxworthy, and it went from because sincerely, when I was a kid, I really thought that like in order to be an actor or comedian, you had to be from New York or California.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that's where they made them. And then when I heard Jeff Foxworthy sound like me and get famous, I was like, well, shit, I guess I could do it.
Well, and my people that know them are going to be upset if I get this wrong, but I swear Tim Wilson and I know Jeff Foxworthy have been on the Bob and Tom show and
Oh
being
yeah, Tim rest his soul was on Bob and Tom all the time.
yeah, and it's based out of Indy. So,
Yep, I've
I
been on
grew
Bob
up.
and Tom a couple times.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, because as
Okay.
Brent has written for him for years. Brent
Oh,
Terhune.
yeah. Of course. Of
Yeah,
course.
I was
My
actually I guess I was never on Bob and Tom because Bob was gone, but it was still the Bob and Tom show.
Well, and it was so interesting to learn too about the history of Bob and Tom because George Lopez, as a Latino comedian, could only do certain regions of the country. But
Mhm.
then when he got on Bob and Tom and kind of got in other markets, he was able to be more of a national talent. So,
Yeah, I came up learning from the people who like now obviously it's podcasts and it's the internet, but I grew up kind of old school. Like when I started doing comedy, YouTube wasn't even really a thing. I mean, I started doing comedy under the Bush administration. A lot of people don't know that because I've just now started to get some like heat, but I've been doing stand-up comedy for we're in year 17, getting closer to 18 or something like that. And so I grew up with like listen to your Tim Wilsons and those guys taking me under their wing and like, yeah, if you got on Rick and Bubba or Bob and Tom or God, there were several other ones that I can't remember now, but that was it. I mean, if you were a mainstay on Bob and Tom, you could sell out clubs.
oh, yeah. Well, my connection to Bob and Tom, my dad was part of the Bob and Tom band.
Really?
So, he would do like I don't know if you've heard it, Can't Drive 465. That was
Yeah,
probably his best song
that's
on
awesome.
on one of the albums. So I just grew up with those guys, and they're
Sure.
still on the air. You know.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, again, like, terrestrial radio, it will never be as big as it was because now we've got podcasts and now we've just got all these forms of media. But Bob and Tom are still like staples of radio. Like it's still a big deal if you get to go on Bob and Tom.
One thing that I talked to Brent about, because we're actually from the same college. I didn't realize we had the same major and everything. But
Oh, right on.
did you have any kind of interest in radio or TV as a profession? Because a lot of people that go into that kind of venture into stand up comedy if they are funny, you know.
I wanted to be what I am right now, a stand-up comedian. I'm sure I didn't know exactly how that would. I don't think I knew that I would end up doing wrestling promos and like as a fake wrestler, and that's what would make me known. But I wanted to be just a straight stand-up comedian since I was 5 years old.
Mhm.
Now once then I found out like, oh, Jerry Seinfeld was a comedian, and then they give him a TV show. Like when I was a kid, it was like, yeah, if you're a comedian, you get a TV show. So in that regard, I always wanted to work in television, but like the first love was always stand-up comedy and still is, even though now like during the pandemic has brought me to a point where like I haven't been on an actual stage. We've done like online shows and stuff, but I haven't been on an actual stage since uh December 20th, 2019, like
Oh
an
wow.
actual stage. And that's and we're talking before that. I mean, I was on stage 7 days a week, every week before that. So now, like, I've kind of started focusing on like, hey, what else could I do in the entertainment industry? Like, I would like to be behind the scenes, make television, do stuff that's not exactly stand up comedy, but I'd like to tell stories. But realistically, it was never like, it didn't occur to me late in life, hey, you should do stand up. Like I wanted to do that from my, I mean, literally my second grade teacher wrote in my yearbook, like, hey, loved you as a student. Can't wait to see you on Saturday Night Live one day. Like it was
Yeah.
early.
Well, and how important is that human connection to comedy? I feel like it can't be easy to be doing these virtual shows because you have no reaction besides your own mind to
Oh,
what
it's
you're doing.
hard. Yeah, it's so hard, especially it's changed the way I've approached it. Like like if you see one of my virtual shows, it is not in any way the same show you will get as if you see me live because I'm one of these guys who I like to write on stage, which basically means like when I come up with a new joke, I never like write it out full form. I
Mhm.
always like, okay, I know what the punchline is because I heard the punchline is usually the first thing that comes to me. It's like, oh man, if I say that, that'll get a laugh, but how do I build to that? Like, how do I get there? And so I'll have the punchline and then I'll have, okay, I know how to start the premise. And then that thing in the middle, I just kind of go on stage until I know I'm getting close to where I can say that punchline and then boom, hit it. And if it works, I'll do it again the next night. And then I'll slowly but surely start live editing. And it's like, okay, last night this part didn't work. So I'm going to change it. And then after about 50 tries, I think, okay, here's the way the joke should go.
Yeah.
And I'll just now keep perfecting it one line at a time or one word at a time. But on the online shows, yeah, I got none of that. Like I got to do it the one time and then it's over. And so I have to write it full form. So I end up doing more like monologue-y type stuff. So to answer your question, it's so hard. It's like it's so hard, man. It's not having that like, oh well, you guys didn't like that when I can go on to the next thing. I have no idea what people are. It's like, and now I feel so bad for all my buddies who are in radio because
Mhm.
that's just them all the time. They don't
Yeah.
know. Like they're
Right.
just talking and they're hoping they're crushing, but they have no idea what the people in their cars are sitting there thinking. So like to me, stand-up comedy, most people are like, "Oh my God, how could you be so brave as to stand up there?" And to me, it's like, "Hey man, that's why I like it because if I'm on stage and something's not going well, I know immediately that it's not going well and I can go do another thing. Whereas like if you make a movie, you make it and then you put it out and then you find out it sucks, you can't take it back, Like in comedy, I can tell if something ain't working and then I can go on to something that I know works.
Now, one way you do get feedback though is on Twitter, and that can be kind of a brutal place. I mean,
Yeah.
what's worse, a heckler on in a live performance or a tweet that just rubs you the wrong way?
Well, definitely a heckler in a live performance because I know this sounds like such a political answer, but it's true. I really, really care about the audience and really, really care about them having a good time. And when a heckler to live performance ruins their experience, it doesn't just ruin my experience on stage, it ruins everybody else's experience. A comment on the internet doesn't do that. Matter of fact, when someone tweets shit at me on the internet, all my actual fans usually take care of that for me. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's really like I try not to look as much anymore, but because everybody's like, dude, don't read the comment sections. But at the same time, you got to read it a little bit because you
Sure.
got to know what people are reacting to and what people really like. But when I see something really, really bad, I just like to go, you know what, man? Think about what they must be going through in their life that they thought to say that to you, that they thought, hey, I have nothing better to do than to shit on this joke, especially if it's something not political. Like if it's something political, I kind of understand it because I'm like, look, they don't like what I'm saying. And I mean, who the hell am I, the guy who's literally screaming at the people they like? Who am I to tell them that they're an asshole for commenting on my thing, which was probably more visceral? But when it's like just a joke that like really is just completely uh non-offensive on any level and they decide to be like that wasn't funny, then I'm just like, man, they must be having a really bad day. Fucking ignore them, they're a loser. And
Right.
again, like I said, usually I don't have to say shit, but there'll be 90 comments from my fans like, yo, get a life, you sack of shit. And that's kind of fun to watch sometimes.
Well, and you talked about it again on your podcast. You kind of have to have a versatile skill set to be a comedian now. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, for sure. You got to be you know, as they say in sports, like a five tool athlete. Like you can't just the days of the dude just being a stand up comedian. Like there's a couple of those guys left. Brian Regan comes to mind. Like Brian Regan is just a stand up comedian. He got famous for being a stand up comedian, not for any other thing. Tom Segura's that way. Like Tom Segura doesn't have he didn't get famous for being in a show. He got famous for being a stand-up comedian, and that's what he does. But those are the exceptions that prove the rule. Like I can only think of two. Jim Gaffigan at one point was that, but then it's like, he's done some movies, he's had a show. You can't really, he's not really in that corner anymore. So like, I feel like now it's like you can't just be a straight stand-up comedian. You've got to know how to edit videos. You've got to, be funny enough to make videos. You've got to have a pretty decent podcast or two or fucking six, whatever it is I got at this point. I don't necessarily like that, but the world is the way the world is. There's so much shit out there. There's so much stuff, and like a lot of it's good. Like I know there's a lot of crap, but there's also like, dude, I think everyone now, since we've been in quarantine for almost a year, everyone has to appreciate how much good stuff there actually is out there because we've been all trying to watch it and you can't watch it all. So
Well,
you really got to do something good.
Well, and it's just amazing to me. I had been in radio in Indianapolis for a few years and tried to break through that way through terrestrial radio. But the power of Twitter, I mean, the concept that I could be talking to you,
Yeah,
without any prior relationship, just through a DM, I mean,
it's
that's a
crazy.
powerful tool right there.
Oh, it's unbelievable, man. Like that's the thing why like I try to tell people all the time, like ignorance is no longer acceptable on anywhere. Like my grandmother's generation. My grandmother was born in 1920. My grandmother's the sweetest woman I ever knew in my whole life. However, from time to time, she would say some stuff that it's like, whoa. But it came from a place of she lived on one farm her whole life. She had a sixth grade education. She knew what her papa told her, and she never got to travel. She never had no money to travel. So like she knew life one way. My granny never had a chance to hang out and talk with any black people or any Muslims. And by the way, I'm not completely defending anyone with ignorant worldviews. All I'm saying is you can kind of understand how people back then could develop them. Nowadays, though, you don't have an excuse because like if something's confusing to you about the Muslim world, fucking DM one, holler at them. You can talk to them. Like they're out there. You know what I mean? If you have if something's confusing you about why somebody would think Black Lives Matter, you can talk to as many black people. You can go see what they're saying. So you don't
Hmm.
have no excuse anymore. And you're right, man. You can't like you wanted to interview me. You just reached out and I was like, fucking hey, bro, let's do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and one of the things that I've done through little bits of comedy, I'm nowhere near your level, but one of the things that I wanted to do was eliminate the stigma of people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And what's one of the things that people with disabilities don't do that often? date, or at least in the
Facts.
minds of common folk. So, putting those bits out and saying, we get the best parking anywhere we go.
Right.
That's going to be a way of kind of breaking down the walls. And I feel like that's what comedy does. It breaks down walls and allows people to actually heal and talk to one another.
Absolutely. I mean, it gives, doing comedy can give you a voice. Like, people
Yeah.
will listen to you if you're funny. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's because, like, when you start laughing, your defenses go down, and your your endorphins and your synapses start firing, and you're just in a better mood. And I'm not like, I'm not stupid enough to think that I can really change someone's mind who is completely on the other side. I don't think anybody really can do that. I know that there's no QAnon person that could change my mind and make me be on their side, but there are people who are just like, kind of like, I don't know. I'm on the fence. I've never heard it that way before. And through comedy, you can at least get them to pay attention and consider something that they otherwise never would have considered. And yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think comedy has always held a mirror to society and made them see things, a little bit. Like, Richard Pryor probably changed a lot of people's perceptions of black people back in the 70s, I'd have to say.
Yeah, and I asked Brent this question too. How much of being funny, in your opinion, is like naturally ingrained in someone? Can you learn to be funny, or is it just something that naturally is there?
I don't think you can learn to, like, someone either is or isn't funny, but you can learn what to do with that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like someone can naturally have a really strong arm. Does that mean they're going to be able to throw a football? They got to practice. Like,
Right.
they have the ability. Like, this person right here has the strength in their arm to be able to throw the ball 65, 70 yards in the air. But unless they actually practice learning how to spin it, learning the angles, learning the form, learning how to get past a defensive end that's coming at them, then it really doesn't matter. So because some of I know some people in my hometown, some of my best friends who, like, I think they are naturally funnier than me, but they didn't decide to go into it. You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? And
Right.
there's probably some things that they do in their job that I'm naturally better at than they are, but I didn't decide to go do that thing. Like, I got some buddies who are salesmen. I think I'd have been a better salesman than them, but they put the time in. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm not right now, but yeah, it's one of those. It's like any muscle. I don't think anyone could go from not at all even remotely funny to being a successful comedian, no matter how much they worked at. You got to have something. But just like,
Hmm.
no very, very insanely unathletic person could just practice their whole life and be an athlete. You know what I mean? Like, you got it or you don't. But it's what you do with what you were given that's how far you can go.
Well, at 5'4" and 220, I knew my NBA dreams
You're
were way
fucked.
bye to me long time ago.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. That's not going to happen, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
Um,
Do something
as
else. Do
far
something that a
as
5'4", 220 guy can do really good. Radio,
sit on the bench,
radio.
yeah,
Yeah,
call the game. That's what we can do.
yeah, exactly.
Um, how did you go about creating your character, the Buttercream Dream, man?
I want to. I can't ever decide if this story is like way cooler than people would expect or just such a letdown. But here's how it happened. One time I got real fucking mad enough that I thought, I'm gonna go turn my camera on and say how mad I am to it and post it on the internet. And I hadn't really done that before. I'd never really been that guy. Like, I was always, before the pandemic, I was just like, I'm a stand up. And for the record, I was on tour with Trey Crowder, who got famous for that. Even
Hmm.
though, like, for those that do not know, Trey had been doing stand up long before he was the liberal redneck. He just happened to get famous for that thing. I'm now experiencing a little bit of that, so I have some empathy for the guy. But I'm not that guy. I don't do that. I just do stand up comedy. The thing I do is jokes on stage. One time out, though, I was really, really pissed off, and I was like, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to scream into my goddamn phone and I'm going to put it on Twitter. And as I'm walking out the door, I just happened to notice my WWF European title sitting on the laundry machine. And the reason it was sitting there is because I'd literally just gotten it in the mail and just opened it. My buddy Super Dave sent it to me. I've been sworn to secrecy. I've had to kayfabe that it was Super Dave that sent it to me because he had told his wife that he sold it at one point, but he's now finally admitted that he gave it to me because he wanted me to get into belt collecting. And for some reason, as I'm walking out in my fury, I was mad over seeing a bunch of people on the right talk about free speech. Once again, and them not knowing what it really was. And I'm going to go out and talk about it. And for some reason, I just put that belt over my shoulder and I walked outside and I filmed the video. I never once said, hey, I'm the Buttercream Dream. It was just me, my regular voice, like I'm talking to you right here. And I posted it online and it got like 275,000 views in like a day. And I was like, God damn. And then I was like, you know what? I bet it's because in the thumbnail of the video, they can see that wrestling belt over my shoulder and they were confused as to what's going on. And then I thought I had been thinking about doing a character online, and the series was going to be called Wrestling with My Emotions, where kind of what you were talking about. I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I thought, here's the one way I'm going to deal with that. I'm going to pretend to be a wrestler, and I'm going to cut promos on my depression and anxiety. Like every week, my opponent will be my depression and anxiety, and I'm gonna beat it into submission. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, that would last like 3 or 4 videos, and then I'd run out of shit to say. So the opportunity just met itself. I was like, well, you had the belt and you were talking about Trump and freedom of speech and all this. You should do political promos. And I needed a name. And my manager goes, well, you love dairy. And I go, I do love dairy. And I also love Dusty Rhodes. So I knew it was going to be something Dream. And then from dairy, I got to butter. And I was like, the Butter Dream? No, the Buttercream Dream. And then it was like, that's it. That's perfect. The name is better than anything the guy will ever say. The name is money. And so I became the Buttercream Dream. And what's crazy is that was in June. And every month since June that I've been doing, June 2020, that I've been doing the Buttercream Dream, I've paid my mortgage with the Buttercream Dream. It's a crazy world.
Good for you, man. That's
Thanks,
awesome.
man. Wild world, huh?
How much of that content is just off the top of your head? I mean, do you go in with certain lines that you want to include?
You know what's funny? The only videos that have been off the top of my head were the past 2 that went really, really viral. Like the one about the the people that were the insurrection. When I did that was literally just me being furious. That was all top of the dome, one take. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene was off the top of the dome, one take. But if you also noticed, neither of them were funny.
No, but I felt your rage, man. It was wonderful.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's why I think those went viral, but those weren't really planned. Those were just like, God damn it. They were like the first one. And the rest of them, the rest of the Buttercream Dream, I write them because I'm really, I'm big on jokes. I love, though, that some people are like, man, this guy comes up with this off the top of his head. That makes me happy that people think I'm that talented, but I'm not. I write them all except for 3. But I will say they were the 3 that went the biggest for me. So there's something to that, just riffing off the top of your head.
Authenticity, baby.
Yep,
Stick to it.
For sure.
Is Marjorie Taylor Greene from your district? I thought you said that in one video.
Yeah, I live in District 14.
How the hell does that happen, man? How?
Well, first off, she ran unopposed. And the reason she ran, she ended up running unopposed, but in the primary, she was running against some people. And the rumor is that these people literally got death threats and they dropped out of the race because they were like, look, it ain't worth it to deal with this shit. Like, these people were getting their bricks thrown at their house and shit from QAnon people, I guess. So, I mean, like, she did run unopposed, and a thing that a lot of people maybe don't want to believe, like, I know a lot of Trump supporters from around here that do not like her. So, like, don't get me wrong, she's popular in her little cult group, but, like, I think that if in 2022, when she runs against somebody that's capable, she's going to lose big time. A knock on wood. But I mean, you know, that's what happens when unchecked lunacy runs unopposed.
Well, and I don't want to get too heavy and into the future, but what concerns me about people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, how do we go back from her?
Know.
You know, I don't know how.
The only thing I can think is like you know, think about how far the pendulum swung from Obama to Trump. Like, surely to God, if we can go backwards that bad one time, we can go forwards, you know, that much another time. I don't know. You got to hope. Because, I mean, again, Obama came after George W. Bush. I don't know. We're capable in this country of seeing something wrong and snuffing it out, but we don't always do it. So I don't know. I think enough people have woken up. I mean, Georgia flipped blue. I never thought in my life I'd see it. And I think that I've said this on several podcasts. And so if you're out there and you've listened to all of them, and I'm about to repeat myself again, but I think it's the better analogy that I have is that Roger Bannister ran the 4 minute mile, right? In a time when nobody thought the 4 minute mile could ever be done. It was impossible. There's no way that anyone can do it. He does it, and then in the same year, 10 other people did it. Basically, because they just had to see that somebody could do it.
Right.
So Georgia flipping blue. I'm really excited to see what Mississippi does in the future. I'm really excited to see what Alabama does in the future. I'm really excited to see all these states realize, wait a minute, we could do this. And then when they do that, I'm not saying that the South will completely go liberal for the next foreseeable future, but I do know that if that starts to happen and it starts teetering in my favor, then the senators and congressmen and people running in these states will have to understand that they don't have a stranglehold on the majority anymore, and so they cannot continue with the lunacy. They're going to have to listen to what everybody wants instead of just going like, no, we got the majority of the state and they really love our racist backwards bullshit. So I don't know, man. Like Georgia flipping, I think is going to end up in the long run being a lot more important than anybody can kind of see right now. It's not going to be considered a fluke. It's going to be a sign of things to come. That's my prediction.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right. When you look at Texas, that was a purple state this year.
Yeah,
Could easily go blue the next election.
for sure. I think it will.
As a native Hoosier, I think I'll have grandchildren by the time Indiana goes blue again.
I
So
think so too. I mean, you know what we call y'all, right?
Oh, please tell me.
The middle finger of the South.
Oh my God. That's so appropriate though, to be honest with you.
I know.
Because it's like we're so backwards, man. Like
Yeah.
I don't even know what's the last progressive thing that we did. Maybe Amber Alert. That's one thing we do get right is Amber Alert and trying to track down kids that have been kidnapped. But
it's always funny when we go to Indiana and I see all these rebel flags. And I'm just like, but y'all literally y'all are just identifying as racist. Like that's you're appropriating our culture. Come on, man.
Corey, how can people find your content, man?
You can go to CoreyRyanForrester.com or wellreadcomedy.com. That's WELLRED. Or just Google me, Corey Ryan Forrester, and all my stuff will pop up. My Twitter, my Instagram, and all that good stuff. I'm the only Corey Ryan Forrester, I think.
What about the podcast? You want to plug any of those?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Through the Screen Door, that is my baby. That is my pop culture podcast with a Southern twist that I host with my buddy Matt Coon. You can go to screendoorpod.com to check it out, and I really wish you would. We've also got the Well Read podcast, which you can find on all that other stuff. But Through the Screen Door, that's my new baby.
All right, Corey. We only had 30 minutes today, but such a pleasure to talk with you, and you're welcome anytime. Please come back.
Well, absolutely. We'll have to do part 2.